Hello, everyone. I've been trying to interview my next guest for quite some time now. She's a busy lady and in huge demand, conducting workshops around Europe, various American states, and in the UK too. I've also managed to pin her down for an interview before she jets off to Australia next month. Her speciality is healing our earliest and often overlooked traumas in the womb stage and the day of our birth. She's an author of an incredible book entitled Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life. This talented lady is also the creator and trainer of her own modality, Matrix Birth Re-imprinting. She's an advanced practitioner and trainer in EFT and Matrix Reimprinting, NLP and timeline therapy, body talk, which is a massive modality in and of itself, colour mirrors, reconnective healing. There's Reiki there in the mix, and trust me when I say the list goes on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my greatest pleasure to introduce the one and only Sharon King from magicalnewbeginnings.com. Sharon, it's so fantastic to have you join me.
Thank you, Daniel. I'd have joined you a bit sooner had I known I was going to get such a great introduction.
Brilliant, brilliant. You obviously haven't always been Sharon King, the healer, author, international trainer, creator of your own modality. So I'm fascinated to learn about what brought you to your own spiritual awakening, to realise that you had so much to give to others and healing themselves. So what was the catalyst? Was there a particular catalyst?
Oh, blimey, there was quite a few. But if you start off along the timeline, actually my own birth experience was apparently all planned and organised for me in order to be able to do this job, although I hadn't consciously realised that's what I signed up for. And I also didn't realise that my own birth experience was going to have such an effect on what I was doing until after I started doing it, if that makes sense. It wasn't until I was actually writing my book and spoke to my mother about my birth experience that I suddenly went, I see why I chose you as my mother and chose that experience as my birth experience. So I could now go out and educate people and help people heal their birth experience. So that's how it all started back then, when 50 odd years ago.
Right.
As I know we've kind of spoken a little bit about autoimmune disease, one of my other passions was trying to help my auntie heal from her experience with autoimmune disorder. And I was on that quest and that journey to search to find a healing modality that would help her. And sadly, I found EFT a little bit too late for her, but it has meant that it's now catapulted me on, the purpose why I'm here. This is what I'm meant to be doing. But EFT wasn't around when I was a lot younger, so I've had to wait until now to actually be able to live my purpose.
Right. Wow. Just to pick up on something you mentioned, you said that your own birth experience kind of was the essence of the work you're doing today. So it's, the obvious question from my perspective is, was your own birth experience quite traumatic?
The whole experience for me of actually being in utero was quite traumatic. Back in the 60s, women were not aware of just how dangerous it was and how bad it was for the baby when you're smoking. I mean, it's as simple as cigarette smoking. There was no, as far as I know, massive traumas that my mum experienced. But to the baby, for me as a baby, that was a life-threatening situation when, I'm being bombarded with these chemicals, and also my mum was quite emotionally, I don't like the word toxic, but she was in quite a high emotional state. So it felt like, when I've gone back and experienced what it was like to be in the womb, that I was kind of being attacked and bombarded with not only the emotional stuff, but also with the toxicity that was going on too. So that was the bit that I think I've worked on first of all. And when I've spoken to my mum about my birth in the past, she's always told me that, well, yeah, it was a hospital birth. And, there's not much to say about it. But when I actually asked her again, when I was actually writing my book, tell me more about the birth experience, she really started to get into it and tell me that because I was coming too quickly, or she got to the hospital, the midwife said, look, your baby's coming too quickly, you need to slow this process down. So we're going to give you some pethidine, and, you know, don't worry, it's not toxic to your baby. You know, it's fine. And actually, no, it's not. It's a narcotic drug. So they might as well have been giving her a dose of heroin or something, you know. And for me as a baby, my experience when I go back into it is that, you know, I was ready to come into the world. I was coming. And then all of a sudden, like, my mum stops working with me. You know, because the birth experience for a baby is meant to be a partnership between mum and baby. And like, my mum was no longer there for me. She'd just switched off. And because my mum is very, very sensitive to drugs and alcohol, it completely just knocked her out. It wiped her out, and she went to sleep and don't remember the rest of the birth. And then I had to fight in this drug state myself. I had to fight my way out of the situation. And then when I came out, she said to me, and she had no clue about my work at all and what I was even writing my book about. She said, well, I was awake for about a minute and a half. I got to hold you for about a minute and a half, and then you were taken away for 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours, I don't know how long it was, to go and be in the nursery while I slept off the effects of the pethidine. Now, that was her story, but my baby story was the fact, and this is what I find a lot with clients, is that babies don't have that understanding that, you know, mum's asleep because she's had pethidine. My baby self is going, well, mum doesn't love me. I'm not wanted. And here I am. And when I went to visit my baby self in the Matrix, I could see myself just laying in that cot, surrounded by other babies that were also crying. And my baby self was laying there feeling pretty helpless and alone, but she was also going, I wish I could get out and help all of you, because I can feel how you're feeling too. So that to me was the beginning, the vow or the wish or the belief that I made, that actually I needed to help all those other babies in order for me to feel better about myself, because it would stop them crying, basically. So the whole of that birth experience now, I just look on that as a learning experience, because, you know, my passion is to help people heal from that being separated from mum at birth. My passion is to work with pregnant women to help them have a more natural birth experience without the use of drugs. My passion is to help women realise that actually babies are conscious in the womb and they understand what's going on, and, you know, these things that we feel are normal are actually sometimes for the baby life-threatening situations. Yeah. So you probably wanted a shorter answer than that, but
no.
You've got the long version.
No, not at all. That's fascinating to me. I'm sure it is to the viewers watching at home. Because quite often when you read self-help books and go to practitioners, and they always talk about the formative years, pre-6. But, yes. But I think your work obviously recognises that there's a lot more. There's obviously the womb stage, the day of your birth, and even back beyond that as well. I'm sure you also more than a few times delve into that area as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I do teach practitioners about the importance of the ancestral link and how to clear those traumas that we carry from our ancestors, but also past life as well. So I do a lot of work around past life. But what I'm most well known for is that work from conception, because even conception has an effect on us, how we're conceived, right the way through to, you know, what happens to us in those times after birth as well. So right the way through that, and of course, you know, with matrix reimprinting, and, you know, a lot of the modalities now are realizing that pre-6 or pre-7 stage, when we're in that hypnagogic state, when we're just downloading our subconscious programs from the world around us, then they are very important times for us to look at. But we forget about the foundations, and I see the work that I do is about how we're either built on really solid foundations. If we've had a great time in the womb, we've had a lovely birth experience, and we've been connected and bonded with mum, then we now have a solid foundation. So if something happens to us when we're 2 years old, say we have to go into hospital and have our tonsils out or something like that, those children that have got a solid foundation of trust and safety and feeling loved and wanted, and that life is quite easy for them and life is quite safe, they're going to have not the best time in hospital, but they're going to be less traumatized than the babies that have either been premature or C-section or forceps delivery or any of the other more traumatic times coming into the world. Then so it just sets up, it's our foundations of who we are, and my job is to help people, and the job of the people that I train is to help people go back and rebuild those foundations of trust, basically, that I am safe.
Yeah, awesome. It's flashing to my mind when you're speaking. It reminded me of, I was a participant in one of your live webinars, and you did this exercise where it was the day of your birth, and you took us back to separate. I think you were working with someone live on the call, but I was kind of playing along for my own version of that. And you talked about separation anxiety when, the midwife hands over the baby to somebody else and get washed up and things. And in that period, in my own journey, there was so much anxiety, terror, fear, and my whole body was just like hyperventilating, and I was in what we'd call abreaction, I guess. So this work is so profound and so liberating and often overlooked. Like you see, more and more people are starting to take this on board and realising the significance and the importance of it.
Absolutely, because it's so important, because what people don't realise, and they'll say that, the babies don't remember. So it doesn't matter what you do with the baby, and even some doctors still believe that babies don't feel pain, and if they do feel pain, then it doesn't matter because they're not going to consciously remember it. One of my other passions is circumcision. Yeah. Circumcising, newborn baby boys without any pain relief, because it doesn't matter, they're not going to remember. Actually, we do remember. We may not consciously remember that time, but we remember in our subconscious. Everything that happens to us is recorded in our subconscious, and it plays itself out throughout our lives. It's like when we have a trauma, it has to start somewhere, and the pattern of that trauma replays and replays, and the beliefs that we made around that time of being hurt or separated from mum, or whatever happens to us, it recreates itself, and it may recreate itself in your relationships with other people. If you don't have a great bonding experience with your mum and your dad, your parents, then that's going to affect how you are in relationship with your partner, or with your children, or with your schoolmates or people around you. You're not going to be able to form very close, safe, trusting relationships, because you've just learned that actually it's not safe to connect. There's either nobody there for me to connect with, I'm isolated, I'm alone, or it's not safe to connect because people cause you pain.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm just sort of thinking, you obviously, looking at your bio, you've went down the route that so many other practitioners go down, gathering tools and information and modalities. I've been similar, and I'm sure people can relate to that. You've touched on it earlier, but did your own creation, your own modality come about? Was it a download in the shower one day, for example, or was it kind of stacked up slowly and gradually over a period of years and an experience? How did it come about?
This particular modality, or matrix birth re-imprinting, came about through working with a beautiful lady called Caroline. And we now call Caroline Chapter 1 because her story is actually in Chapter 1 of my book. And it started a little bit before then when I met Carl Dawson, and he taught me EFT and then matrix re-imprinting. And it was while I was on a body talk course. And it's really funny you mentioning all those modalities, and I hardly use any. I don't use any of those now, yes, other than my own, matrix re-imprinting, matrix birth re-imprinting. But each one of those courses that I've done has added something to what I do, even if it's just information. And it was on a body talk course where the teacher was a lovely guy called Kaini, was talking about how our senses are either developed or lost at birth. And he was saying that in America that they're very keen on giving babies vitamin K injections, that they put silver nitrate drops in the baby's eyes just in case mum has syphilis, which then stings the baby's eyes, but also makes the baby's eyes all blurry, so they can't connect and see with mum's face for about half an hour after they're born. Now, the optimal time for birthing is the first 45 minutes.
Right.
So if you can't see mum's face, and that's the only thing you're programmed to see, if you can't see mum's face for that first part of your birth experience because somebody put some drops in your eyes, then what they discovered was that children at 4 years old the majority of children at 4 years old were having to wear glasses. Whereas in a year before that, before they started the silver nitrate drops, hardly any 4-year-olds were needing to wear glasses. So they then discovered that actually the baby's making that belief it's not safe to see, and they're withdrawing their sense of sight. And the same can happen with hearing. If there's a lot of noise going on in the delivery room, the lights are really bright, they then get something stuck into their foot. It's an abuse of the senses, basically. So babies need to come into the world in a soft light, in calm environment where there's low level noise. Just imagine how you feel waking up first thing in the morning. You need to slowly wake up and come into the world and not be assaulted with the alarm clock going on and the lights coming on and flashing at you and people shouting at the bottom of your bed. It's the same thing. So, taking a breath, when Kaimi was talking about how our senses are developed or withdrawn at birth, I had this light bulb moment going, ping, I wonder what we can do with matrix reimprinting. What can we do if we were to go back in time and heal that trauma at birth, what could we do? And then a few days later, I was on the workshop with Carl, and Carl was doing a demonstration with a lady who was 5 months pregnant, which prompted me to then tell him about the senses thing. And he said, look, go and work with Caroline outside because she's in fear of giving birth to her third child. So, and I will keep this very, very short because it is a little bit of a long story, but between myself and Caroline, we created this experience of going back and healing the trauma of the birth of her first 2 boys. We even went back into her own birth experience and cleared her own birth experience. And we did what I now call a future birth re-imprinting, is that we showed the baby how the birth was going to be in the future. And it was 6 to 8 months after that when I spoke to Caroline again after she had given birth. And she just said to me, look, so much has changed since we did that session. She said, I'd lost my fear of giving birth. The boys had changed. Stuff that had been going on with them had changed. Pain, physical pain had gone away. They were a lot more closer than of a family, because she also had trouble breastfeeding as well. Her own separation anxiety when her husband goes and works away, that had gone. But the most exciting thing was the fact that the birth of her baby was exactly how she showed the baby it was going to be. It was, calm, it was peaceful, it was gentle. She was able to, spend time bonding with her baby afterwards, and she breastfed really easily. And going on from there, the next baby she had as well was born in exactly the same way. So she'd had 2 very traumatic birth experiences, and then after the healing of all that, she went on and had 2 very natural, beautiful birth experiences. And it was at that point, after the third baby was born, that I actually went, you know what, this is what I want to do. I can get passionate about this. And it obviously sparked my own remembrance of my birth experience and how it wasn't that. And so I then, like a lot of us who've experienced trauma, went on this passionate road of, right, give me all the information about birth, give me all the information about consciousness, and let's see what we can do. And that's how Matrix Birth Re-imprinting was born. So it was kind of a co-creation between myself and Caroline, but with Kaimi that sparked it, with Carl's input, and with the help of all the beings that I work with as well. It's what I'm meant to be here. This is my purpose. This is why I came here. And sorry, just to add one more bit in there, when I was writing my book, I asked for some guidance, like, what is this process for? And what I was given was that the children in the future don't need to come in with birth trauma. This is for our generation and all the generations before us to experience, that the new children coming in, and it may not be like right now, but leading forwards into the children coming into the future, they're not going to need these birth experiences, these traumatic birth experiences. So this is all about changing the past for the new mothers and helping them have a more positive birth experience. And of course, it's all about education as well, that actually we can, and we're meant to have natural birth experiences. So yeah, back to you.
Your passion certainly shines through when you're talking. I'm getting tingles in my arms, goosebumps when you're talking about changing the way children are brought into this world en masse, so they don't have that trauma to start things off on. So how massive is that work? What strikes me to ask you next is, if there's practitioners watching at home, or people are wanting to get themselves out there, I want you to reflect back to how your work's evolved. So obviously where you are today is the product of, years of experience, getting yourself out there in the world, doing your own inner work for the next level. But if you cast your mind back to when you first started out as a practitioner, because I know when I look back, I'm thinking, I was doing my best, but I certainly wasn't, I was a bit of a rookie. So have you got any words of inspiration to share with our viewers in that respect?
Absolutely. I was thinking back. The only way when you're going through life, you feel like you're going like this. You feel like you're being batted from side to side, and you go off on this modality, or you try this, or you experience that, or you have this trauma, and it feels like the path is like this. But when you actually look back, and they say hindsight's a wonderful thing, and it is, I can just see how my path was pretty straight.
Right.
When I first started learning EFT, I thought that was it. I thought, I found what I want to do. This is absolutely amazing. And then matrix reimprinting came along, and the next evolution of EFT. So, but the most important thing that I learned is that there's a timing to everything. And you may be absolutely passionate about what you're doing, but things may not just work out for you. So I'll give you an example of that. I worked in what I call my muggle job.
Yeah.
So people who have watched Harry Potter will know that muggles are non-magical people. So I worked in this office where I ran a UK company for an overseas company, and I was doing purchasing and accounts and travel, organising travel, and all of this stuff I was doing within my company. And it gave me the money to go off and do all these courses. I had the time to go off all these courses, and I was also working with clients before my muggle job, and at lunchtime and afterwards. And then at weekends I started teaching. So I was working a lot around that time. And I handed in my notice. I thought, this is the time, I'm going to go, I'm going to leave my job, and I'm going to be a full-time therapist. And I started to get a little bit panicky when we were doing interviews for people for my job, and I kept thinking, this doesn't feel like the right time. But then I'm asking myself, actually, is this just fear? So I did what I call my timeline technique, my future timeline technique now, where I asked to be shown the future timeline of what would happen if I stayed in my job, and the future timeline of what would happen if I left now. Because I know there's a big burning passion for a lot of people that, are in muggle jobs, or what they see muggle jobs, and they really want to just branch out. And what I saw, that if I left now, this path was really rocky and bumpy, and felt quite heavy and hard, whereas this path was straight. And again, I'm questioning myself, going, is this really true, or is this just my fear speaking? And I asked to be shown for sure whether this was true. And what I did is I went up even further above my timelines. And what I found is that my timelines came together like this, and they went into one. So it showed me it didn't matter whether I choose the hard path or the easy path, I would eventually get to doing what I'm doing now. So which path did I choose? Which path would you have chosen?
Well, I guess the obvious answer is to pick the smoother one.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. And I said to my boss, look, I think I'm making a mistake. I'm leaving too early. Can I have an extra year's contract? And he said, absolutely. And I said, instead of interviewing people to do my job, which is a very bespoke job that I had to do a lot of training for, let me interview somebody to be my new assistant, and I will train them not only to do the assistant's job, but to do my job too. So I had a year of having a lot more freedom to be able to go and do what I wanted to do. But I also chose an assistant. She was the first girl that walked in the room, and she's still there now, 7 or 8 years later. She's still doing my old job, my old muggle job. And she was perfect. And she absolutely loves the job with a passion, whereas I was born silly with it. But it gave me that stability. And when I look back on that, 5 days after I actually left my muggle job, my father transitioned. He died. He was experiencing dementia. We had an 11-year journey together with his dementia. Now, when he died, because I was in charge of the finances, I knew exactly what was going to be coming to me from those finances, and that saw me through those first 2 years. So on just purely on financial basis, if I'd have left that year earlier, it would have been very difficult because my business wasn't at a point that it could financially support me well enough. So by staying that extra year, I had all the financial support I needed, and it gave me that extra year to build my business. And then I had the finances to keep me going for those first couple of years. And so sometimes not getting yourself out there right now is the right thing for you. So there's that timing piece as well. So just check on your limiting beliefs. Am I good enough? I'm doing this woo-woo stuff. Is there a past life here where, I've been killed for being a healer? Do all of that work as well, but also appreciate that patience, which is also one of my life learnings about patience. Sometimes you need to be a little bit patient.
That's fantastic. Yeah. It's so inspirational for those watching at home who are looking to transition, who may be stuck in a muggle job, feeling trapped. And I think the only difference that sets those apart from those who go self-employed, transition and make it happen and make it successful is not giving up. You mentioned doing the inner work. What is it they say? There's no such things as business problems. It's your own problems which are reflecting out into your external experience. So if you can keep working on those limiting beliefs, as you say, and just not giving up, keep believing in yourself. And if something's not working, try a different avenue, reach out for help.
Yeah.
And just keep going.
It's also about teamwork as well, Daniel, because I know when I first started, I already wore a lot of hats in my muggle job, the purchasing, the arranging travel, all sorts of different things, the accountancy, because I've done a bookkeeper's course a long time ago, a secretarial course. So, I had all those skills, but I still felt a little bit overwhelmed at having to, create a website, to keep my accounts up together, to do my own marketing, do you know what I mean? When you go self-employed, it's like you have to wear many, many hats. It's not just about being a therapist. And that can be quite overwhelming for people. And they also don't realize that there's so much more. It's all very well scheduling your clients, but if you don't have time to market what you do or to spend time, in other areas, then, it can get quite overwhelming. So make sure you've got a team around you. And I know, a lot of people go, oh, but I can't afford somebody. It's like, well, you can't afford not to, really. And you need to base your prices when you're looking at the whole of your business and not just as, that hour as a therapy session. You also have to take into account all the other things that are behind the scenes that you're going to have to do. And, now I have a guy who does all my website and my technology. I have a lovely lady who helps me with my newsletters and doing some various marketing stuff. I have an accountant, and I have people who coordinate my workshops because I just cannot do it all on my own. I can't be therapist, I can't be teacher, I can't keep my house running without people who look after my animals when I travel. And, there's a big team. You need to have that support around you as well. So make sure that's in place because that is very important.
Yeah, and congruence as well in your message, because I've seen there's obviously some marketers out there, and they're like marketing machines, and they market something within an inch of its life, and then you buy the product and you think, really, all that for this, really? But like when I first stumbled across your work, Sharon, your work would stand up for itself, and I used to look at your marketing and I see this with so much love and respect, and I think, you're like really understated. You're not really sort of pushing it out there, and this is what I can do, and blah blah blah. You're understated, but clearly your work and your congruence is standing the test of time, and people are drawn to your work.
Most of my work, the people that come on my courses, the people that are drawn to working with me, do so because of word of mouth. Carl Dawson's very supportive. Whenever he teaches a matrix re-imprinting, he always talks about the matrix birth re-imprinting, because it is a kind of an offshoot of matrix re-imprinting. But even still, people come to me, and it's about trusting that those people are going to come to me. But I hate being marketed to. So for me, it's always heart-centered. It's always authentic, as far as I can possibly make it.
Yes.
And I just trust that the people that need to find me will find me. The people who need to read my book, the book will get out to them. That's a part of, when I was writing my book, I had to really look at what I wanted the book to do, who I wanted it to reach, but also look at the book as it having its own life. To begin with, I had to nurture my book. I had to, grow it, if you like. It took me 9 months to write, interestingly enough. Yeah, it took another 3 months to edit it. So that was forming it and shaping it in its newborn years, and then to publish it and get it out there. But now it has a life of its own, and it's starting to grow up, and it's starting to find its way out in the world. And the best way to market the book is to talk about the work that's in the book, but it also, people read it and then pass it to somebody else, and it's just very slowly finding itself out in the road. Now, I could have done a really big marketing campaign, and really, I don't have the time to write articles. I'd love to have more time to write articles to promote that and the work and the education, but I also have to trust that it's going to get out there in its own way. And that's people like yourself who asked me to do these interviews, you're all part of that process, that teamwork, if you like. And I just see marketing needs to be a teamwork. Other people will promote what you do for you a lot better than you can promote yourself.
Yeah, so you mentioned your book a few times, and you've picked up on questions I was going to ask. You've answered them already, I should say, which is great. So where can people get your book if they want to buy it? They've been watching this interview and they think, I want to buy your book.
Amazon's the best place. So it's on all the Amazons, and it's on there as a hard copy, it's on there as a Kindle, and it's also on there as an audio book. So that was a fun experience.
Yeah, so your book is Heal Your Birth, Transform Your Life?
Heal your birth, heal your life.
Heal your life, that's right. So you could obviously try and book a one-on-one session with Sharon if she was available and she was very busy, or you could go to Amazon and buy a book.
Yeah,
full of insight, wisdom, and
the lovely thing about this work is that it's always transforming, if you like. So my next focus, if you like, is to work with midwives and doulas and help them understand just how important a key factor they are in the birthing process. That with a really great, amazing, supportive, loving midwife or doula then people are going to have a lot better birth experience and a lot better chance of succeeding in that natural birth than if they just go in hospital and just leave it open to the medical profession. And I know a lot of the medical profession are doing the best they can, but they have very limited knowledge of what it takes to have a natural birth. And they're also coming from the point of view of, there's so many medicated births now, there's so many birth interventions that are so unnecessary, and they're doing the best they can with the knowledge and understanding they have at the time, but it's really time for them to up their knowledge. And it's time for parents to be informed as well about what it takes to have a natural birth experience, and to set yourselves up for a higher probability of that happening.
Right, awesome. I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask. No, I think about it, but I'm going to ask it. You don't have to answer, but we've obviously been talking off camera.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned you're doing a mentoring program.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you could promote or talk about in this interview, or is it too early to go into that just yet?
For the parents, you mean? Because
the interview we've just done prior
yes.
to this one, you said it was for a mentoring program. Is that?
Okay, well, there's a couple of mentoring things I'm doing. So I'm mentoring Matrix Reimprinting and Matrix Birth Re-imprinting practitioners, but I don't remember us talking about that. But I think you're talking about the parenting one. And when I get time, I want to put together this program so people can, there's 5 modules to it. There's conscious conception, conscious pregnancy, conscious birth, conscious new parent, because being a new parent is a really tough time.
Oh, yes.
You know, with the breastfeeding and the sleepless nights and the not knowing, you know, the right or the wrong things to do. But there's also conscious relationship, because mum and dad, or mum and mum, or dad and dad, whichever way the family unit is nowadays, or single mums or single dads, then and the people around you create the energy, if you like, that baby's going to grow and be nurtured in. So if the relationship between the 2 partners isn't great, then the baby's going to be, you know, really affected by that. So I really want people to start looking at their relationships and owning their own stuff, their own triggers on, you know, why this relationship isn't working, and going back into their childhood. Obviously, it's all about going back into our childhood and healing ourselves from that perspective. So just to give the new babies coming in the best advantage, the best start, and to start working with parents before they're even parents, so parents to be, even when they're thinking around it. And of course, I also do work with IVF, adoption, loss of baby. That's one of my my most favourite areas to work with, people that have actually lost babies. So there's a healing of all of that needs to go on, ideally before the mum even conceives new baby. So.
Right, awesome. You've been incredibly generous with your time, Sharon. I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts to leave the viewers before we call time on this conversation.
Okay, so there'll be a lot of parents listening to this information. So my thing is, always remember that you were doing the best you can with the knowledge and understanding you had at the time. When you were born, your parents were also doing the best they could with the knowledge and understanding they had at the time. I remember how offended my mum was when I, you know, did an interview and said about the smoking. So, you know, she was doing the best she could. She had no knowledge that was actually a dangerous thing for the baby. You know, the doctors are doing the best they can with the knowledge and understanding. And as we are all starting to wake up now and realise that our actions have consequences, that actually start thinking big picture, start thinking out of the box, and look at, you know, how our experiences are affecting our lives. Quite often, one of the things that I didn't say is that how we were born also affects how we give birth. So going back and healing your own birth trauma will really help a lady give birth, or a woman give birth, a lot more naturally. And that goes for midwives and doulas. They're attracted to being midwives and doulas because of their own, half the time, their own birth experience, whether that be good or bad.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to the viewers at home for tuning in. If you've gotten value out of this video, and I know I certainly have, show Sharon some love, some hearts, some legs. We welcome your feedback, your comments, your questions. If you want to connect with Sharon, what's the best way, Sharon?
Through my website, magicalnewbeginnings.com. I also have healyourbirthbook.com as well. So either one of those. If you want to listen to Caroline telling her own story, then healyourbirthbook.com is a good one to go to, because I actually interview her about the sessions we've done. And of course, she's chapter 1, so you can also download that for free from that website too. So either one of those 2 websites, you can also contact me through that.
Okay, thank you so much for your time today, Sharon, sharing your expertise, your experience, and your love. We appreciate you. Thanks to those watching at home. Bye for now.